Hey guys, every now and then Campfire Audio releases an IEM that captures the imagination of the guys at Super Best Audio Friends. This goes back to the Andromeda. After that, Solera. I like the Aura. I don't think everyone else did. And lately, new versions of the Andromeda. I think 2020, Solaris, and so forth. So it was just interesting when I got a tip from a fellow member about, hey, the Astroliths, they're legit. And it so happened that I was at Can Jam to get a listen to them. And I would have to say they definitely are legit. The Astrolith is a planar IEM. It's not the first one from Campfire Audio or other companies. There have been many. So I've heard the potential of past IEMs, but they never quite hit the mark. They were either kind of mushy, they had peaks and the highs, or they were just kind of weird, physically in terms of how they fit in the ear. The Astrolith it's an interesting design. It uses two drivers, one very large one, a 14 millimeter, and a small one. Obviously, because it's using the same type of driver, it just has great coherence from the bass to the highs. I know there have been other IEMs that were very highly regarded, which use different drivers. An example would be the Sony IER Z1Rs. But those to me just kind of sounded weird. I think they were, they use like a dynamic driver for the bass, balanced armatures for the mids, and something else for the highs, and it just sounded totally disjointed in terms of timbre from the bass to the mids to the highs. And even then, that $17,000 IEM, the Fugaku or whatever, similar, DD dynamic driver for the bass, BA for the mids, XBEMs for the highs. I thought they did a really good job in trying to make everything fit together, but it just doesn't sound like something that's coherent all the way through. So I've other IEMs which I felt were very coherent were like the Andromeda or the Aura. They're just all BA designs, balanced armatures. For what they are, they have a certain kind of sound, but at least the spectrum from the bass to the highs, it did sound different. It was really consistent. So yeah, it's really nice here that this is purely a planar design for the lows and the highs. The tonal balance of the Astrolith, they're bassy and flattish in the rest of the range. With my initial listens, I thought there was a little bit of a peak, but I kind of tweaked I played around with the tips, got tips are a little bit smaller and kind of shoved them in a little bit deeper. It really does sound flattish. You can take a look at the measurements. I don't think they really mean much when it comes to IEMs. The bassiness extends up to the high bass, which is kind of interesting. It could be dangerous because then it can get all mushy and cloudy, and despite this amount of bass. And also, it includes a mid bass too. Voices just didn't come off as boomy. Yes, sometimes when I listen purely to podcasts and stuff, it could be a little bit boomy, but sometimes I kind of wonder if that's the fault of the microphone. The extent of the boost, it's not as strong as past Campfire Audio IEMs like the Vega, which was literally like a bass cannon. It was just too much. Now the Astrolith, in terms of sensitivity, it's not super sensitive like past Campfire Audio IEMs like the Andromeda, Solaris, which it was really hard to get a usable range of volume, especially if you weren't using it from like a phone. If you're using it from like a desktop amp, it was very touchy, right? Maybe like the first notch or two of the volume, like it'd go from soft to super loud. The Astrolith is different in this way. There's quite a lot of range for the volume knob, especially if you put it on just low gain. The next question is whether an amp is needed, and yeah, I've heard this thing from desktop amps, but the fact is this actually works great from an iPhone dongle. I feel very happy not to mess with stuff having an extra special dongle. I mean, we're talking about the cheapy iPhone dongle, and the Astrolith just sounds great. Coming down to the fact that they're planars, right? There's always the questions, right? How's the heft, right? The heft and the lows, it's obviously greater than that of balanced armatures. I'm not sure it quite hits the heft of dynamic drivers. Some dynamic drivers can just have a ton, they just feel like they hit you really hard. It's not quite there, but it's very close. But what we get in return are just super articulate lows and clarity. What else do we get with planars? Very smooth highs. I've heard a couple of planars in the past. They're kind of uneven, the highs. The highs are super smooth, what would be expected. Even then, going back to the prior Campfire audio model, the Supermoon, I felt I needed EQ in the highs to kind of back that off a little bit. The soundstage and layering, typical of Campfire audio IEMs, is fantastic. That's really good about that. I don't really have much to say that these are not going on the loaner program, and I think that's really the strongest thing I can say about them. I actually love these, and I want to keep them. I will talk to Ken to see if we can buy a pair for Super Best Audio Friends. We'll see how that goes. I just don't have too much to say other than wow, these are really good. If you're looking for a bassy IEM that's flat in the rest of the range, these are it. So I'm going to leave it at that. Before we go, I wanted to touch a little bit on the distortion characteristics of the Astrolith. Let me pull this up. This is the aura here at 85 decibels, and we can see that the that the second and third orders tend to be a little bit even. Actually, in this case, the third order, which is in white, is a little bit higher than the second order, which is in yellow. This is very typical for balanced armature type of drivers. We can bump it up to 95 decibels. We can see the second order go up a little bit higher, but the pattern's kind of there. We tend to have fairly even second and third order distortion. Now, let's take a look at the Astrolith, right? This is Astrolith at the lower volume, 85 decibels, and we pretty much see it's only second order. And then when we crank up the volume a little bit to 95 decibels, it's got this nice pattern where the second order is dominant, and then there's a little bit of third order, and the fourth order doesn't really rise. So this kind of explains why planars and also dynamic drivers, because dynamic drivers tend to have the same characteristics, different from balanced armatures. I think the only difference between dynamic drivers is they tend to have overall higher distortion. So with planars, we're kind of getting the best of both worlds. We're getting a really nice pattern where the second order is higher than the third order, and also overall low distortion. So I just wanted to cover this really quickly. The Astrolith, how did it make me feel? Just like brought him home. I was listening to it just got me in the mood, right? I was thinking, Earth, Wind, and Fire, or I went back and just listened to old 70s, funk, it's like the Cold Club thing, right? And I was just flipping through and okay, well, and then my playlist, Billy Idol, right? Flesh for Fantasy. It's like, oh my God, it's just okay, I feel like I'm in a club, and Billy Idol's floating in front of me, and then all of a sudden there are just boobs all over me and shit like that, right? And then what were you saying? What were you saying? What about? It's not just boobs. What about something else? Or
you can't leave the butts out of there. You got to do the boobs too.
Yeah. It's whatever you want. So it's if you're in the butts, it could be butts. It could be a bunch of dicks. Whatever you want. But
I thought you were kind of crazy. Yeah. I kind of felt like you were the kind of person who was it you're something you drank something or something weird, because you literally possibly It literally, because it kind of sounded like the way you're describing it. It kind of sounded like you took some kind of LCD, like the music was flowing into like just.
But I didn't take anything. I didn't take anything that day, and that's the thing. I think the Astrolith really grabbed me. It was just, it's really cool listening to them. I haven't listened to them in the last few days. Maybe that's what I need to do. I need to put them on and then
Yeah, I think
talk
you did.
about them.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, whatever.
A little bit.
Yeah. So